Hello again, guys, and welcome back to another Big Al Devlin video here at the House of Devlin. Today I'm going to have a brief discussion, hopefully, although it will end up probably being a lot longer than brief, about magic and who can use it, why they can use it, and how it can be used in different ways, essentially. But I'm going to try and clear up as much as possible for pagan and non-pagan alike, because there is some confusion also amongst pagans about magic, because a lot of knowledge has been lost over the years, and it's about bringing that knowledge together and trying to understand it. And I feel that I've dedicated a lot of time to the study of magic, because I showed a natural affinity for it. And I just want to, first of all, before we get started, there are two things about magic that you need to know. Pagan magic, you either can or you cannot. That's the first thing. You can either perform pagan magic of whatever particular type it might be, like the runic magic, for example, gouging magic, healing magic, Seder magic. There's a whole range. Necromancy. You can either do it or you can't do it. These are absolutes yes or no's. If you can't do it, there's no way whatsoever, even if you had a complete master of pagan magic of their particular field that they're able to perform magic on, teaching you, doesn't matter how much they teach you and how hard you try and how many years you put into it, you'll never be able to do it. You'll always be faking it or tricking people into thinking that you can do it if you don't tell the truth, that is, and to say I can't do it. It's not about a matter of willpower, it's a matter of just simply being born in that way to be able to do it, because there are actual certain bloodlines that exist within the original pagan folk that allows which are essentially act like keys to a lock. They unlock the ability to perform only certain types of magic. Okay, so that's the first thing. You either can or you can't. Now, if you can perform magic, and it takes a lot of study, a lot of practice, a lot of involvement to develop that magic to greater levels, and there's no guarantee that your ability with that magic will grow over the years, even if you are trying hard to develop it. It's not something which is a guaranteed you put in you get out. Generally speaking, the harder you work at it, the better you will become, but some people will put in a very small amount of effort and get a lot out, whereas some people put a huge amount of effort in and only get a little bit out, and that's talent. Okay, a natural talent to it for it. So you can first of all have to be able to do it, but then how well you can do it, well, that depends again on how strong your bloodlines are, I assume. Okay, that's an assumption there as to the explanation as to why only certain people can do certain types of pagan magic genuinely. Now, there are a lot of frauds out there, so and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, because there's no one really that I can really put up, but just generally speaking, when you look at mediums, for example, in current day, but especially within Victorian times, even though this was not pagan magic as such, they were kind of doing very similar stuff to pagan magic, and they may in fact based it on Nordic pagan magic, because of course they were obsessed with Nordic paganism, the Victorians, and so much so that they rewrote a lot of it. So learning true Nordic paganism can be quite hard, because you're not sure sometimes whether what you're reading is something from the Victorian era or the original period of Nordic paganism, but that's a whole nother thing. But these people who would act as mediums, if one, they were not pagan, and two, they were not of the pagan bloodline, and three, well, whatever. There may be other people in the world who obviously can act as mediums. I'm sure there is, amongst different religions, amongst different groups, even people who just don't believe in anything. They've just inherited the natural ability to be a medium, for example, which would be a form of necromancy under pagan magic, by the way. And this ability to commune with the dead is again something you can either do or you can't do. There's no sort of middle ground. And of course the mass majority, as we've proven over time, and you look back at how they did it in that, were the ones who can't do but tricked people for money to get paid. They trick people into believing that they could talk to dead relatives and that. Personally, I think that's absolutely disgraceful and disgusting, making money off people's grief, even if you are settling their souls to some degree by saying that their murdered child is happy in heaven or whatever. It's still playing God to a lesser extent, or not. It's not for you to do. It's not for you to do. But genuine mediums, that's a whole different ball game. There are genuine mediums out there. 10%, 1%, between 1 and 10%, I would say, of those mediums out there who practice being a medium, I would say are actually genuine. So I would say a significant amount of them are actual hoaxsters, tricksters, frauds. Okay, and this is just from my study of magic, in my own belief system, for example. So I've explained that basically the can and can't do part of magic, but there is an even more important part about magic that you must know, and this will be very, very indicative to you, regardless of whether you can or can't do it. You can't blame anything for it. So saying, oh, my equipment is incorrect, or the crystal ball wasn't right, or the stones weren't written properly, or whatever, right? Pagan magic does not require any form of ceremony, any trance, any dedication to the gods, any scents, any candles. Doesn't require anything at all to be able to be performed by someone who can genuinely perform them. For example, I am a Seder folk, as I have mentioned before in other videos, and I believe earlier on in this video. I'm a Seder folk. I can practice Seder magic naturally, always have done, even before I was a pagan. So it shows you it's in my blood. It's not just because I'm a pagan, it's in my blood to be able to be a Seder practitioner. Before, I had no idea what it was, and what the hell I was seeing, or how to control it, or whatever. But as I've become pagan, I've learned different ways of controlling it and amplifying it, strengthening it. But my whole point is that I was able to do it with no ceremony, nothing, no words, and I still can to this day immediately use my Seder abilities to see the strands of fate to a degree. Okay, and partially manipulate them and get information out of them to some degree. My natural affinity tends to be able to be drawing emotions out of those fates, the emotions that people feel, and being able to change the emotions attached to those strands of fate, which is, not something one typically associate with Seder magic, but it is something that Seder's practitioners can do. Seder's much more about fate. Seder practitioners can do a lot of different magic. They can place curses, the whole shebang. Okay, and as I say, this is something you'd expect from someone who has inherited the ability to perform the magic of Seder, the magic that the goddess Freya herself gave to man, who is herself the goddess of magic. So it's going to be a very varied and somewhat powerful magic, and I will get into in more detail Seder in its own playlist, its own series, a dedicated series, and what Seder can do and what it can do for you, if you are a practitioner or you just want to see someone who is a Seder practitioner practice their magic. But the point I'm making is, as I say, is that you are able to use those abilities without tools. Okay, and I can do that. Other people out there will go to the local crystal store or anything along those lines, buy it all, put it together, and then start trying to practice Seder or rune magic or Gauda magic or whatever it might be, necromancy, whatever, and they'll be trying to do it, and they think that the power comes from the stones like this, for example. Okay, rune stones. which I made myself, they think these give them the power, or they enter a trance, because they've learnt that you can enter a trance. Anyone can enter a trance. You don't have to be a magic practitioner to enter a trance, but they enter a trance and believe that that's enough then to prove that they've performed some kind of magic, and then they say whatever they saw or did or whatever. They burn candles and different scents and incense and stuff like this, and they say that this helps clear the mind and clear the room of evil spirits or whatever. Now, all these are partially correct and partially fake or false also. These tools that I've described, scents, a beating of a drum, for example, in Seder magic is very common, rune stones, whatever it might be, or simply if you go back to the real old days when before rune stones were created, bones and teeth, when you just cast the bones and teeth in front of you. These are things that are not required for you to be able to perform your magic. However, they are tools that help heighten your ability to perform the magic. They make it easier, or if not easier, they allow you to go deeper into the magic. For example, I can use Seder, but I can only use Seder magic to see the very immediate future, and I can feel the present, but I can't visit the past, and I cannot see the distant future, or the really distant future, anything beyond essentially an hour or so. I can't see that without using the tools to help focus me. So yes, I can perform magic without these tools, but the tools just allow me to focus my mind to a much greater extent and allow me to perform it to a much greater depth. For example, when I've used trance and a metronome drum, for example, in combination with my Seder magic, I've seen up to and into a Ragnarok itself, which is the end of time. So I have gone very far forwards indeed, okay, as far forwards as one can go. And I've seen ways in which I can manipulate those strands of fate, such distant period of time that they are, to alter certain parts of Ragnarok. So it is something where I would possibly be able to do it just by entering a trance, or just by relaxing, being by myself in silence. And in fact, actually, I think I use a lot of my Seder magic just when I'm mostly relaxed, kind of almost involuntary, so to speak, sort of background noise that keeps filtering through. You can't stop it all, and that's really where magic comes from. And it will be the same for every other true magical practitioner out there. They will have this ability to do their magic, and they'll have a sort of blinkers constantly on them to try and keep the magic away. Because it can be very distracting, and sooner or later you learn to live with it, but there will always be a trickle going in, and you'll always get the odd little bit of sight. Or if you're a rune smith, for example, you might go along the path of the runes, or if you're a Gelder magic practitioner, for example, you might suddenly find yourself talking in rhyme and influencing things and stuff like this. Okay, or if you're a medium, if you wish, a necromancer, then you may start seeing the dead, or communing with them, especially in areas of the world where the veil's a little bit thinner than it is elsewhere. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, genuine magic does exist out there. It's not as powerful as one would think. As I say, it's not fireballs coming out of your arse or anything like this. It's not Hollywood shit. But there is some quite impressive stuff that you can still nonetheless do with it. And I will be adding to the series of what you can do with it, as I say, when I focus on both the runes and Seder magic. Now, my description of the runes, if I just get ahead of time, will be simply a description of the runes. I'm not a runesmith. I'm a Seder folk. Okay, the ability to use rune magic is for the Vit key. I will go over the bloodlines in a minute. They're for the Vit key. They're the ones who can get the true power out of the runes. I can feel the power within a rune, for example, and I can see the power in the rune, and I can use it to some extent, but I don't use the power of the rune, or I don't use rune sight or anything. I don't have rune sight at all. I can only see them when they're inscribed on something physical like this. But if you have rune sight, you'll be able to see runes whether they're written down on something or not. I don't have any of that, but I can still nonetheless use the runes to help focus my mind, and let me sort of use my state of magic more efficiently, because that's something that I haven't gone over. Okay, one of the things about being a magical practitioner of a particular bloodline, there are 3 main bloodlines. Let's go over the bloodlines. I've done this before, but for any of you who may not have seen it, may not have understood it, there are 3 distinct bloodlines of magical practitioners within the pagan society, and this is recorded within the Hind Luiod, which was an old Edda, which translates to the Lay of Hindler, the Lay of Hindler. Okay, and it directly references it here. Okay, all vulvas, which are a form of magic practitioner, they're typically female, but they very much can be men also, and gender has nothing to do with it. Okay, you can be man or woman, and the man can be more powerful than the woman, or the woman can be more powerful than the man. Gender has no association with this. It's just a society thing. Male vulvas were looked down upon in ancient society, but they can be men. Okay, and there probably are an equal number of men as there are women. Okay, it's just the men kept their heads under the didn't practice their magic, so we say, in front of people. Okay, for the reasons that society shunned them. Okay, so all the vulvas, which in English, Old English, is pronounced Vala, okay, are from Vidolf. Okay, all the Vitki, this is another bloodline of magical practitioners, are from Vilmaidia. All the Seder folk, which is what I am, are from Svarthofdi. And all the Jotuns, an old name for, or the Nordic name for giant, so all the giants, or all the Jotuns, come from Ymir, and Ymir was the first of all giants, the father of all giants, and that is true. If you're a giant, your bloodline directly links you to Ymir himself. Okay, now, basically, what this passage here is suggesting quite heavily is that those who can practice magic have giant's blood within them, and it must of course be a dominant gene also, because it would have probably died out by now, and the fact that there are still magic practitioners up to this day, and a reasonable number like myself, suggests that it's a dominant gene within the clans that originally he got involved, so we say, with these particular giants. Okay, now one thing to say is, in pagan belief systems, that man and woman were created from the corpse of Ymir. Okay, the corpse of Ymir was used to create the entirety of Midgard, or Earth, pretty much as we would see it now. Now, the realm of Midgard would be the universe, but Midgard itself would be Earth. So Earth, the planet Earth, is the corpse of Ymir, just being reshaped and rebound into different ways, and in a way that can sustain life. And Ymir, his hair was vegetation, and we were carved from trees by Odin and given what's called the breath of ecstasy, which was what made us aware, self-aware, gave us a conscious, a soul, if you wish. And the fact that we are from Ymir, that the fact that we are carved in essence originally from Ymir, makes it even more likely that we would have been, of course, compatible with giants, and able to produce viable offspring. That is, children that themselves can have children. Okay, now whether you know, I'm a Darwinist. I believe in Darwin, but you know, regardless, our origin, we came from somewhere, and if you go far enough back, we do come from this earth. So we are made of this stuff, of earth, and so we must of course come from Emir, and that's the way I see it. Okay, so we're all giant anyway. In theory, our bodies are giant, but our soul is in the possession of Asgard, essentially, or is of the spiritual realms itself anyway. But anyway, without going more into that, what it's just said then, and all the Jotuns that come from Emir, that suggests that all the above names that were mentioned, of course, are Jotuns, are giants, and so this is why we know they're giants. So all the Volvas are from Vidolf. Okay, so Vidolf must have been a giant who must have bred with or intermingled with a number of different pagan clans and families, or maybe just one clan, or maybe just one female. We don't even know if Vidolf is male or female themselves. Could have been a female giant. And bear in mind that giants aren't giant. Okay, they're not humongous, they're not massive, they're not big, they're typically human-sized. Okay, the word giant is been lost in time. Etin is the true name for what you would describe as a giant. Something that's massive would be called an etin. Okay, in English, but when we say something is giant, it means it comes from the giants, which is actually this bloodline of gods. Okay, so giant is just a name for the clan of, or the bloodline of gods that regarded themselves, or well, came from originally Emir. Okay, so the fact, you could say, well, wouldn't it be a bit like a Great Dane and a Chihuahua breeding? No, not likely. They would be human in appearance and human in size. And the other thing about giants also, or Jotun, is that they were excellent shapeshifters. Not all of them had the capacity. Well, no, actually, every single giant that I've ever come across in every saga and every Edda does have the ability to shapeshift to some degree or another, and some of them can shapeshift completely from, you know, the shape of a man to that of a woman, to then to an eagle, and then to a giant, literally a giant, or an etin, you know. So they are excellent shapeshifters and are known for it also. So even if they were in their natural form very big, they could easily shrink themselves down and appear to be a beautiful, you know, human female, or very handsome human male, depending on whether they wanted to breed, obviously, with men or women. Okay, but I assume these were men, because of course if they were women, the children would be, of course, with them, unless they integrated themselves actually into the clan, that the children wouldn't be part of the clan. So they must have been men, or at least there was an integration of the giant into the clan itself, but that would have been harder to do than you'd imagine, because the clan, everyone would know everyone, you know, and they wouldn't accept outsiders easily. They would, under the right circumstances, and you know, a beautiful female could wanting to join the clan. Yeah, it's one of the reasons that most chieftains would accept, but nonetheless, it's more likely that they came as males and bred with the females of the clan. Okay, so Vidolf, okay, he gives his descendants the ability to practice both, well, one or all of these, depending on how strong your bloodline is, shamanism, sorcery, and prophecy. And the form of prophecy that you are able to fulfill is either it comes directly from Seder magic. Okay, so you're able to perform an aspect of Seder magic. You can see into the future, maybe not that far, but you can see into the future using Seder magic, but you cannot do anything else within Seder magic, which is important to understand. Just because you can see into the future does not make you a Seder folk. Okay, you have to be able to be a Seder folk, practice all forms of Seder magic. I'm just trying to find the old word for that particular type of magic, but I think it's called a Seif, which is, Seif is the Spay. That's it. Okay, so spay. My apologies. So Volvers are able to perform spay, which is a very specific form, as I say, of sailor magic, where you are able to divinate, but only partially. Okay, but you do have in there sorcery, which I will get into when I do a focus on sorcery, because it's quite extensive sorcery, and there's not a lot on it as well, but it's very extensive and very complicated. And shamanism, which we know a lot more about, and I will get into later. But shamanism is typically sort of rune stones and Gauda magic and things like this. Okay, now all the Vitki. Okay, so if you come from the Vitki bloodline, that means that you come from Vilmaidir. Vilmaidir is the name of your giant, so to speak, that gave you the ability to practice magic. And these individuals, the Vitki, who are the ancestors of Vilmaidir, are excellent healers, so they can perform a lot of different types of healing magics, not just simply herbology. They'd have other aspects to their healing also, have a natural affinity to be able to heal individuals, or speed up the healing process, at least within an individual. So they would be able to concentrate on the individual and allow their body to heal itself just at a faster rate than typically you would expect. Okay, and they can stave off fevers, things like this, even without, as I say, the administration of herbs. I must admit my knowledge of healing magic is minimal. I know very little of healing magic. You'd expect I'd at least have studied that. I haven't, of course, studied medicine at university, but I know nothing about healing magic, so beyond what I've just told you there. So I'll leave it there. But they could also perform rune magic. They were actually excellent runesmiths, essentially. You could use rune magic for divination. They could use rune magic for expanding their minds. They could use rune magic in combination with Gauda magic, for example, to enhance Gauda magic. Because Gauda magic is one of the magics that pretty much any magic practitioner can use. There are certain magics that all magical practitioners can use, and I'll go over that later. Well, I'll go over it now. The magics that every magical practitioner, someone who can practice magic, is able to perform in one way or another. Some have a greater affinity to different types of magic than others, and so on and so forth. But is Gauda magic. Gauda magic is just literally being able to cause an effect with your words, with the sounds that come from your mouth. Now, a simple one of this is something that I practice Gauda magic all the time. When I go to the gym, when I'm lifting heavy weights, so on and so forth, I will repeat to myself two words: Aruz and Furizas. Aruz is the word of strength, essentially. It's a rune of strength found within the Elder Fuvok script, okay? And Furizas is willpower, essentially, but it's the ability to go through any barrier and all resistance and to continue on regardless. And I combine these two, Aruz and Furizas. Originally, I used to say them out loud. Sometimes I still do. But sometimes I just visualize the shape of the rune in my mind, of the two runes, and then kind of merging together. And other times I just repeat them very silently in my mind. But I must admit, most of the time, speaking them is most effective. But all three forms are very effective in using the runes there. And as I say, using rune magic in combination with Gauda magic, for example, or simply just by keeping it in your head, you don't even have to speak it, can give you tremendous, in this case, tremendous strength and zeal and determination to do something that is physically possibly impossible for you to achieve. And rune magic has a whole host of uses, and I will go over that in a, as I say, separate series. I'll have a binding of the runes, or the forging of the runes. I'm not sure exactly what to call it yet, but I'll have a series on that where I'll show you the stones being made, and it will just literally be telling you small amounts about the runes. It will then show you them being made. It's not going to be the most interesting series, but it'll be there for those of you who want to you know, learn and watch something in the background, like bit light entertainment. But then I'll do a second series on the runes, where I look at the runes, as I say, on an individual level, because at the moment with Rune Magic I'm focusing on the runes and how they interact with one another within the ayats, and then how the ayats interact with one another on a much larger scale. But I do want to look at them as an individual rune. Like, when would you use this rune? For example, like a ruse, Ansu's, for example. When would you use that rune? Okay, well, yeah, put in the comments beneath what when you think you would use that. But there are certain points when you would use certain runes. I have my notes here. I just say I'm not a natural rune practitioner, so I do require sometimes a little bit of guidance. But Ansu's is something that I don't know. I don't know why when you would use it. I must admit, I'm not a practitioner of that type, but I still do use them for my own benefit. But there are ones that help protect you and stuff like this when you feel threatened. I mean, Furizas is a very good protection rune, but it can backfire sometimes. But anyway, I'm getting too deep in different types of magic. Okay, so that's the Vit Key. They are powerful rune magic practitioners or rune smiths, and they would possibly may even have rune sight. They should do. They'll have rune sight, which is something which Odin possessed after he hung himself for 9 days and 9 nights, if I remember correctly. And as I say, they're also excellent healers. And you get to myself, the Seder folk, we're from a giant called Svarthofdi. Okay, and that actually, I've got the translation for that somewhere. Okay, Svarthofdi means black head. Okay, Vidolf, which is where the vulvas come from, means Vidolf means wooden wolf, and Vilmida, which is where the Vit Key come from, means wish tree. Okay, so you've got the actual English translations there of the names of the Jotun. But yes, myself, I have the blood of Svarthofdi in me, either through my mother or my father or both. Who knows? I know the fact that I do seem to have quite a strong Seder ability, and both sides of my family do herald from both Celtic and, well, my mother comes from Celtic pagans, my father comes from a combination of Celtic and Nordic pagans, originally Nordic pagans, but of course when they resided within Ireland after they settled in Ireland, they converted to Celtic paganism. So I have a combination of Celtic and Nordic paganism in my bloodline. So there's a good strong possibility that perhaps I might have the bloodline in both sides of the family. Anyway, I really just did this video. I said it was going to be a brief video, but it's ended half an hour. Really just to make the two most important points. You either can or can't do magic, and if you can do magic, you don't need ceremony to perform magic. You just use ceremony to make magic easier to perform or stronger in its performance. Okay, so as I say, when I go into a trance and I have the beating of a drum, it helps me focus and it lets me free my spirit out of myself essentially and travel a lot further down the strands of fate than I would otherwise be able to do. Or as I say, it just makes it easier. Doing it now, if I tried it, obviously I'm not going to do it now, but if I tried it now, I might be able to achieve that depth of, as I say, projection. But it would be a lot harder. I'd probably have to be trying to literally lock myself out of the world, mentally speaking, which is hard to do sometimes. Hard to do. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Bit of a hot potch video this, but I just needed to clear up on a couple of aspects that not everyone's clear on. Thank you.